All right, we'll jump right into the introduction and thing. Um, what's going on, folks? It's your boy Oso. In case you ain't know, so Rhymes Oso to some, but Oso to most. Host of the Culture on Culture. Let's Start the Conversation podcast. And today I got two legendary guests, in my opinion, my eyes and thing, from the community, from the Alexandra Park community. We've got Herman, we've got Mosin in the building. Both of these two gentlemen are integral in my development over years in the community. So it's a pleasure and a blessing to have them on the platform today. How y'all doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Ditto, man. It's a pleasure to be here. We finally made it. Oh, I know we've been trying to get here for a while, so I'm glad we finally made it happen, man.
That's it. That's it. So, as always, I just remind folks that the conversation is fairly informal. I do have the mics turned up enough so you don't have to sit with them right there if you don't really want to. You ain't comfortable with it. I'm just, I mean, I always got the microphone.
You're an
Yeah,
MC
yeah.
by
That's
trade.
it.
Okay, we get it.
It's reflexing thing. It's reflexing thing. But first and foremost, man, like, how do you, how do y'all feel community work has changed over the years since y'all have been in this role? Because I know it's definitely
question.
changed with the availability of certain programs, with the staff and whatnot, with the youth and their engagement and video games and all of that stuff. But how do you feel it's changed and affected y'all jobs or the jobs of youth workers and
I'll
counselors?
take an initial stab, and then Herman could jump in if you like, man. But I think one of the changes that we see is, like you mentioned, the advancement of technology and the access to technology. It's something that we're up against. Once upon a time, when Herman and I was first doing this work, in the late 80s, early 90s, it was no problem getting 50, 60 kids to come to our programs and into our gyms. Kids wanted to get out, they wanted to do things, so they were coming to our programs. The numbers were always high. The challenge I see today is, similar type of programs that always had great turnouts, from your organized ball hockey leagues to your organized basketball leagues, skill development programs. Programs today don't see those type of numbers. And I think the challenge is kids tend to be more online, doing gaming activities, computers, and so forth. So I think in that sense, that ability to just connect with people because they're in your space was a lot easier, because when we had them in our space, we were able to program, we were able to do the life skills, the development, all those important pieces as well. But today it's trying to figure out how to get creative and how to attract them into our building, into our spaces, to be able to provide those services.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that that the key to doing what we do and to do it effectively
You might have to hold up a little bit more.
is to get in front of them,
Yeah.
right? You want to get them here. You want to get in front of them, and you want to introduce them to something. It doesn't have to be basketball. It doesn't have to be, but you want to introduce them to something, right? But the key is to get them in front of you. And it was so much easier back in the day, like Mosin was saying, when they're always in front of you, right? Like, you know where to find them,
Yeah.
you know how to get them there. And then, there's 20, 30 of them playing basketball. It would be really easy to suggest, hey, you guys want to go camping? Hey, you guys want to do this? Hey, you guys want to do that? I mean, a lot of the great things that we were able to do was because we were in front of them. So, the introduction to technology means that, we need to try to meet them in another space and in another place altogether. And that it must be done because you need to get in front of them.
Yeah, the conversation will kind of jump all over the place because the questions come to me as we're talking. But how have you found building or bridging the gap between the two sites, between Alexandra Park and Scatting Court? Like, obviously, you guys have a rapport, so that makes it a lot easier in order to build in that aspect. But how do you feel it? Is there more advantages to having the two sites in the proximity like they do, or is there more hurdles based upon it? Because we kind of serve the same community members and whatnot, right?
No, I personally think it's become a lot easier for Scatting Court to access Alexandra Park, and and to partner and do work with Alexandra Park, right? And for sure, it has a lot to do with Molson being here, and our relationship. But if we're doing our jobs right, then it shouldn't have anything to do with the two of us. I think that there's a lot of advantage in the two organizations working closely together to continue to meet the needs of the community. 100%. It's Scatting Court needs Alexandra Park, the community center, the same way that Alexandra Park needs Scatting Court in order to continue to meet the challenges that come, right? So, I think with time, hopefully we could continue to move the two organizations closer and closer together in terms of coordinating programs and raising resource. I know that that is one organization has a long history of raising millions and millions of dollars, and the other one is just getting into it. But wouldn't it be great if both organizations start working together to raise millions and millions of dollars for the community, right? I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's what needs to happen in order for the organizations to stay strong and the community to continue to get the resource that they need, and to keep both entities relevant and alive in the community, right? It's no question about it. That organizations like ours regroup and we work together to create longevity, right?
And on top of that, the reality is that the community benefits. When both organizations are able to work together and support each other, it's actually the community that will benefit in the long run. We both have expertise in different areas. The community continues to grow. There's more population, more density coming into the community. So to be able to have two organizations that can address the needs to the community it's really the community that benefits from that kind of arrangement. But I also recall as a kid growing up here in the neighborhood, Alexandra Park, Scatting Court Community Center, Ryerson Community School, they all collectively worked together. And we were a witness to that. We were recipients of being kids growing up and seeing all the community groups working together, the school and community organizations working together. And we have fond memories of going to festivals every summer put on by the three groups and what that felt like. And that unity kind of helped lend to the community spirit that we were a part of as kids growing up. So, Herman and I, to be in these roles today, we remember that, and we remember what that felt like to be a part of a strong community fabric. And the work that we're trying to do today is kind of remesh that community fabric and bring that strong sense of community back into Alexandra Park. I think as a whole, we've been pretty lucky in Alexandra Park that we've never really gotten away from 100% the community feel that we hold near and dear to our heart. And I think a lot of that has to do with the folks that, have worked in community services. We've worked in the services for a long time, but we're all kids who grew up in Alexandra Park. Scatting Court has many AP residents working there today. AP has many residents working here today. So that level of investment of having community members working in organizations in their neighborhood is a different level of investment. And I think that adds a lot of value to the work that we do.
Definitely. Another question that comes to mind in thinking about that, both organizations, as I'm sure, have folks that aren't exactly the most pleased with the way things are done and whatnot. For certain residents and certain community members who may have issues or may take a certain stance in the way things are run, what kind of suggestions would you have for them to see improvements or to kind of have their ideas implemented if they don't feel like they're seeing them?
I would just encourage them to come see us, man, to be honest, because a lot of times, I may hear the little rumblings here and there, but it wouldn't have a lot of value for us to go chasing after rumblings, because they're really just, hearsay talk here and there. The more effective way would be is, I would hope that you would feel comfortable with enough between Herman and myself. I think we've both been very approachable individuals throughout our lives in this role. I would hope you feel comfortable with both of us, if not at least one of us, to be able to, come on over and have a sit down with us and let us know how you're feeling. Let us know how we can improve, because when I hear these things, my immediate response is that if somebody doesn't come and tell me what the issue is, I can't fix it, or I can't do something better if I'm not aware of it. If it's a rumor that's floating around, then it's a rumor floating around. But I would really hope that community members would come and see us and speak to us if they're unhappy about programs or services or unable to access certain things, because I think Herman and I have a proven track record that we've always kind of gone above and beyond to make sure that our community is supported as best as possible. And especially when folks take time to come out and see us, we tend to respond as best as we can, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So, it is at the end of the day a democracy, and we tend to respond to those issues that have a lot of need, right? And that are most serious, and we also need to filter out the noise. Some of this stuff, some of the rumblings, are like anti-black, anti-Semitic. You start to name it, right? Misogynistic. There's a lot of stuff, that we don't do that we do that people are upset about because of their own individual thinking, and they rumble about that, right? And we're inclusive organizations trying to work with everybody and trying to meet the needs of those that need it the most, right? So we also have to remember that some of it is noise too, right? Some of it is noise too.
Quick little story, and I think back to it. I remember. And you never know this because I never even really spoke about this, but I remember at a point in time I was frustrated with you because this is around the time I was just finishing high school. I had been doing remember I was coming in and helping out with the after school programs and the basketball and whatnot, and I was doing the co-op at the school. And I remember I was doing all this volunteering, and I went to apply for the summer camp job, and I didn't get it, and I was pissed. But in going through the years and advancing, one, a conversation goes a very long way. Two, there was a lot of maturing I had to do on my part. And I did that part. I didn't see. I didn't really see how it wasn't exactly, it's not exactly just about what you're doing when you're in the building, but it's how you're carrying yourself. It's how you're moving. It's the attitude you have. It's the people you're around. It's the conversations that you're involved with. And it took me a lot of maturing to actually go back and see, okay, that's why that didn't happen at that point in time. And sometimes when I think back to some of the rumblings that I hear and whatnot, as you mentioned, sit down and have a conversation. You can clear up a lot. But that also comes from a place of being accountable and saying, okay, you know what? Let me go and have this conversation to see what it is, because it might not be what I'm actually thinking about. Or there might be something I'm misconstruing or whatever the case. So I just kind of wanted to mention that as a first person experience where what I thought it wasn't really what it was at all, right? And then that's where some of the harboring comes from.
Absolutely.
It's a good story. It actually reminds me of a very similar story that I had too, because one of my early jobs was here at Alexandra Park as a camp counselor before I started over at Scatting Court, and Kenny Ramsimir was the supervisor here. And I got suspended for a day of work because we were off site at a field trip. And, a lot of counselors were kind of socializing. And, of course, we weren't paying attention to the kids the way we should have. And so for some reason, I felt Kenny single-handedly pointed me out and suspended me for that day. And at that time, 15 years old, I'm upset with Kenny Ramsey. I'm like, yo, I known you my whole life. How dare you suspend me? And everybody out here is talking, why you pick me for? You know what I mean? But I didn't recognize it at that time until after, and I reflected. It was actually a really good moment for me to recognize the responsibility I had for other people's kids and going out. And, I'm taking them out of the city, and we're at a field trip, and the responsibility I had, even though I was 15 years old and I'm looking after, 10, 11, 12-year-olds a few years younger than me, but it's a responsibility. And I think for me at that time, I kind of felt like how you felt, and I'm sure other kids have felt like that over the years, because things haven't gone their way necessarily. But as you grow and you learn and you see a different perspective, that's part of the growth in ourselves. And today I thank Kenny for that, because that helped me be mature, and of course it made me prepared for other opportunities that came forward after that. So I had a similar story as well around that.
And also, we want what Molson and I always have to struggle with is the lack of resource, especially around the summertime, right? We want to employ all of our youth, and let's get that straight. Like we want to be the employer. We reluctantly send youth to the employment centers around us, right? Because they can't do the same thing that we can do with our youth, youth that we've literally known since diapers, you know what I'm saying? And it's tough when you don't have enough money to bring everybody on and all that sort of stuff. So, I'm not saying that's what it had to do with, but I just want you to know that we see our the opportunity in the summertime, especially when youth aren't in school, where we want them to stay and grow, and we support them getting there, as an opportunity to make an investment in them, and to have them mature and to realize positions like yourself in the community. I mean, I think so. We've been investing in this ideal for many, many years. I mean, when we keep young people around, and when we make the proposals and the requests, and we beg at the city and all that sort of stuff, it's because we're investing in our community, right? And we're hoping that young people like yourselves, take us up on the opportunity to join this, do this work. I mean, it's not lucrative. It's not beautiful. It's not, it's hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard, and it's not 9 to 5, and then you got to work weekends, and so all about everything that we're saying. So it's a hard sell. Mm-hmm. Right. So every opportunity we get, we introduce kids to this, and then, we try our best to continue to invest in them. If we had, an unlimited amount of money in the summertime, chances are that every single young person that's interested in this work would be doing this work because we want them. And sometimes we're sending away great kids, and you know that there's a lot of great, hundreds and hundreds of them. Mm-hmm. That we know personally that have lived here, that have done work with us, who are out there in the world doing big things. Mm-hmm. So we miss the opportunity too when we tell folks, sorry, you can't work with us. We're losing out too. We know that.
Well, I definitely want to clarify. In my particular case, I wasn't ready. Where I was in my mindset at that point in time, I wasn't ready, so it was a good decision in that aspect, and it also kind of forced me to be in that spot where I had to self-analyze and I had to look into some stuff, and it also highlights, similar to your story, you do have to be able to separate the personal relationship from the responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, which also makes the hardest part, because in being back here for the last few summers and doing summer camp and having to hire counselors at LITs, I've had a good share of folks upset with me. But
also, you've been doing it for what, 3 summers now? We've been doing it for 33 decades.
So I've firsthand seen I really do want to put you on the team, but there's only so many spots. And out of all of the candidates that came in, you fell just a little bit short because of this factor, because of that factor, or you didn't even fall short and it just wasn't an appropriate spot or whatnot. So it's definitely a better, and hindsight is always 20/20, so I definitely have a better understanding of it now. But I just feel like it's important to kind of speak on these things and be transparent about this stuff, because a lot of people just jump off their own assumptions of what it is, and it's rarely actually the case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think for us, like, the most important thing too is, even if we can't give them the opportunity at that time, in that summer month or that fall month, we never want them to feel that they're not part of the community or part of what we do in the organization. We always want them to know that they're part of the organization. They might have a little, hostile feeling at that moment, but we want them to always come back, because you never know. There could be an opportunity down the line. Mm-hmm. There could be some mentorship. There could be some growth. There could be some other opportunities that lead to avenues to lead to other successes in their life. So, just because you didn't get that one summer camp opportunity or that one job opportunity doesn't mean that you're still no longer part of the organization, or the organizations don't want to support you. So we want folks to understand that piece is that, we always want you to be a part of our community. We always want you to come in and know that there's always going to be opportunities for us to support you wherever we can. It might not just be employment at that time, but there will be some opportunities. And I always, being around Herman and working at Scouting Court, we always figured out a way to help somebody. So if we didn't give him a summer job, but we knew that we needed some cleaning at community events, hey, you know what? I wasn't able to give you a job, but I can give you a few $100 here and there to come clean up for summer events that we have. We have 4 events. I can give you a few $100 to come do this throughout the summer months. So try to get as creative as possible just to let them know that we're still going to keep you connected. We not give you the opportunity that you applied for, but we're going to try to support you to make sure you at least have some money in your pocket or some opportunity with us.
Oh yeah. Like, the support comes in. The support comes in many different ways, right? It's not always the job, and I recognize that that's super important. Young people want jobs, first of all, they want money, but then the quick they want money, but the quickest way to that is to give them a job. But there was a time when we were taking young people from our community down south, so that they could display their ball skills and try to win scholarships and to go to university. So we did that, and then some of those young people ended up trekking the world with us, to go play ball in like Mongolia and China and like Beijing and all that kind of stuff, right? So not all of them worked for us, those young people that did that stuff, right? But it's still like an incredible support, right? And young people come back and they say things like, Herman, man, thank you very much for the ball hockey program and being there every Saturday. It was great that I had that outlet. I learned so many things being there, and you're just like, what? I wasn't teaching you nothing. Right? What'd you learn? Yeah. Right? But he goes, I'm successful. I'm doing carpentry out west. I have a family, all that sort of stuff. So it doesn't always look like a job, right? But the work that all of us are doing, it resonates and it stays with people, and they might not get it that day, like when they're when you tell them to exit the ball court because you're cussing too much. It normally comes back and they're sitting around scratching their head one day and they're like, shit, I get it, man. I should I have a kid now, you shouldn't be cussing. Yeah. And those guys are never doing it right. So the positivity that we bring to the work every day, and just the pure sort of determination, man. You gotta be resilient, man. You gotta be committed to this. And the more committed, we are to this, and the more that we show up, and the more consistent we are, the better results we're going to have with the young people. And it doesn't always have to be a job. It's just being here, being their rock, representing their community, making sure that their community is clean and vibrant and shit's happening and all that sort of stuff. All of that stuff ends up creating a better human being, right? A good member of our society, a good member of our community, and potentially, great community leaders.
Absolutely. Those opportunities are so important, because I think about all the numerous stories of the young people we worked with over the years, and it's not just employment like you said, but it's the opportunity to take them abroad. The kids that we took overseas who to this day as adults are like, those were some of the most memorable moments of my life. To be able to travel to a place like Mongolia, who gets an opportunity to go to a place like Mongolia, to Beijing, and those experiences were so life changing for those individuals, and even opportunities for something as closer to home, to take kids on their first camping trip, to take kids on their first ski trip, to take them come fishing in our swimming pool. I remember when we ran the fishing pond for 15 years, and we saw these little kids that first time, and they fell in love with it. And when they went to high school and they had to do volunteer hours, the first thing that they came to was Scouting Court and said, hey, can I volunteer in the fish pond? We just essentially watched kids grow up with us through these opportunities. And year after year, they'd come back every summer to be a part of the fish program or the camp or join us for a ski trip or whatever. So those were like life-changing opportunities that we provided that were extended beyond employment, that as adults they reflect back, and those were memorable moments for those folks that help groom them into responsible and caring adults.
Oh yeah, man. People giggle. People giggle at some of the stuff. They giggle at some of the stuff that we're trying to do with our youth. And like I remember they giggled when we said, all right, we're gonna get some kids together and take them golfing, right? Like, I mean, it's like golfing, nobody golfs here. Like, what do you guys mean, right? But we had a partnership, and this was when I guess the buildings down south of us, down Spadina, Canoe Landing.
Yeah, they weren't.
Canoe Landing wasn't built yet, so they had a inner city golf course thing going on down there, right? So we had a partnership with them. We took some young people golfing, and one guy, like the first time with the golf club, freaked everybody out down there because they're just like, holy smokes, man! Like, this is such a natural,
Yeah.
right? And it's things like that, like it's another opportunity. I don't know if that kid went on to play golf or anything like that, but he could have.
Yeah.
And he would have never known that he was I saw him as an adult, and I'm like, remember when those guys were freaking? He goes, yeah, man, they never saw anything like that. Never saw anything like that, right? Yeah. So he knows, like, like I'm special that way, that, this is something that I could have done. And wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have taken golfing for the first time. And, so you can giggle at that, that sort of stuff. And, there's a whole bunch of other things that we've done. We're just like wild and out there. But I think that that's what has to happen. You have to move young people out of their comfort zone, introduce them to every single opportunity, see what clicks, see what doesn't click. I mean, what's also important is them understanding, not for me.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
I don't ever want to do that. No
curiosity.
No. Like
that,
I'm not like I went camping. I went canoeing. I was in a boat.
I remember one kid we had on our portage trip, and we were doing these big portages, almost a kilometer portage, and the kid looked at Herman and I on the boat, and he turned around. He said, "Most and Herman, why would anybody want to do something like this?" So we knew at that moment that wasn't for that kid.
He wasn't going back, he wasn't coming back, right? But he was out there and he did his thing, and he survived it. We all did, like, I mean, I think too, and why I know at least why I keep coming back is opportunities like that, experience like that, man. I've had the greatest laughs, and some of the greatest memories, that connect to, my own life, hanging out with young people from my community, and then talking about it with them, years and years later, and just recognizing that moment was special to them too, right? Because not only was it, do I remember it, but they remember it. They're like, man, Herman, you're right, man. Those are some of the best times of my life. And I'm like, wow, I remember I was talking to this one young person. He's just like, I go, man, just like listen to hip hop down by the water, up camping, man, those are some of my greatest memories. And he's like, holy shit, Herm, like those are some of my greatest memories too, right? Just listen to hip hop on a beach while we're out camping. Simple things, man. I'm just like, man, that was so cool back then, right? And he goes, yeah, man, that was cool, so. I don't I giggle with them, but in the back of my mind, I know that it's when you start giggling, I know we're onto something.
Yeah. It reminds me, Herman, what you just said there. Like, as we, over the last few years, we've been celebrating our mentor, Bob Ellis, in many different ways. And we hear a lot of stories from his family that, the way we speak of Bob, and we're always like, Bob did so much for us. And Bob was our mentor, and he was our father figure, and he was such a important role model in our lives. And the family always says, Bob always told his wife and his family that he got just as much from us as kids that he gave to us. And I think for you and I, Herman, it's the same type of sentiment. We've got a lot over the young people that we've worked with and the experiences that we've had. And, they can say that we impacted their lives, but equally so, they've impacted our lives too, and they kind of keep us motivated to do this because, the to see young people grow up to be responsible, successful, to appreciate the opportunities that we gave them. It's inspiring and motivational for us to continue to do this. And after 30 years, you think you'd kind of get tired, but I think you and I still got the gas, we still got the juice, the motivation, and I think that's really because we get that from the community that we work with. We get that back from them.
Yeah, man. Yeah, like every day we come, it's something new, a different challenge. People here like, the decades in one place, and how can you do it? And I'm just like, man, the job and the roles and everything changes so often. Your responsibilities change so often. There's nothing monotonous about it. Like yourself already, you've experienced, I'm sure, a couple changes in roles, a couple changes in responsibilities. As you mature and understand, by the day, by the day. We've been through some stuff, and I think that keeps you, that keeps you exciting, keeps the job exciting. Not many people are fortunate enough to do work like this, and I consider it an absolute privilege. And I know how lucky I am, and I don't. There's no regrets in terms of how long we've been at it, right? Because I know that I know that not many people get this lucky to have this as their job. It's like an absolute privilege to be around some of the seniors that we work with and hearing their whole life stories, and watching young people grow up and develop and do big things, win awards, become like outstanding members of our community, members of the country. We've seen all of that.
Yeah,
We've seen all of
very
that.
lucky. Yeah, very blessed to be able to see people be so successful in their careers, representing the city, the province, the country, to have those connections, and very, very powerful people in society today that come back and be like, man, Herman and Molson, I remember my time spending summers with you guys, and those were like, those were memories that I'll always cherish and always have, and those were the type of things that kind of instilled in me about being a good human being and a good individual. So those are always amazing. And the other thing we're so fortunate, Herman, is the parents that come and see us, and they're like, they bless us with all their well wishes and thank us, and they say, I pray for you every day. You were such an important part of my family's life and my kids' lives, and you can't ask for a better blessing than that, man. Like, as Herman mentioned, that these aren't lucrative type of careers, but that blessing and that love, man, extends well beyond
Absolutely.
the financial compensation, man.
And I'm glad y'all spoke on it that thoroughly, because I think it's extremely important that, as you mentioned, the opportunities aren't always jobs. Sometimes it's just experiences. Like, for me, getting to do the co-op programs and be Mr. Oso to a lot of those young folks who are now in the community doing their thing. Like, it was an opportunity to recognize the effect that I had on the younger generation and how much they were actually paying attention to what I was doing unwittingly. Because you have this idea of what a role model is, but in reality, every individual is a role model for somebody. Whether you recognize it, acknowledge it, accept it or not, you are setting a tone for somebody who's watching you. And those opportunities gave me a chance to actually recognize it, and sit with it, and then want to do something about it. And it's important to highlight that, because money isn't everything. You can have a very lucrative job and not get as much gratification out of it as I know I've experienced in just some of the summers. Never mind the after school programs or working with some of the mentorship groups and little moments throughout the day where youth might come and be like, yo, so I remember when you did such and such and whatnot, or I remember you also used to say whatnot, and I did this the other day, or you know what, I was in this situation and I thought about you and I kept my cool about it, and it's like, all right, cool. it just makes it all the more worth it. Is there anything else that y'all pulled? Because I know there's trying days in doing this type of work or whatnot. Besides those stories and those memories, is there anything that you guys try to do or tap into to kind of regulate yourself again or get yourself grounded again? Because there's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows. And I try to keep myself even keeled, not to get too caught up in either side of it.
Yeah, a younger me didn't know how to do that. A younger me would lose his cool real quick, man. But over the years, I've learned how to keep more even keel. I gotta say, I'm blessed to be around this guy my most of my life. I think, the 30 plus years I've known and worked with Herman, I don't think I've ever seen him lose his cool once. And there's been a lot of opportunities where he could have lost his cool, man. So Herman's always kind of been that motivation for me. Like, how does this guy stay so calm and collective in these like situations where the average person will just, lose their cool. And so he's always been kind of that inspiration. Like, I got to be more like Herms. I can't just flip my lid and get upset and lose my cool and start cussing and all that kind of stuff because, I've had my moments like that. But, I think over the years I've grown in that capacity. And, sometimes, you make mistakes in life and you have to have some hard lessons. And through those lessons, you hope you grow and you learn and you become a better individual. And, I've had to do a few of those things too. So, having that journey, having some people around you that, represent what it feels like to be more zen, more calm, more cool. I think a lot of those type of experiences where the growth comes in. And to anybody out there that's listening or watching, like the reality is, nobody's born as a perfect individual and has all the answers when they're here. It's part of the journey in life. We all got to go through our journey in life, and at different stages, that growth will happen. And a lot of times growth happens during the most challenging times, during the hard times is when the growth really happens and it really kicks in. So I think, people can be aware of that and recognize that it's never going to be a smooth journey. Life is ups and downs for all of us. And, when you're up, enjoy it, embrace those moments. And when you're down, try not to stay down too long, but try to take the learnings that come down with those moments when you are down. And I think that's kind of been my path over the years. And, at the stage that I'm at in my life right now, I tend to stay pretty calm. And some of the things I do personally is, I get up in the morning and I do a little meditation. I do a little bit of stretching, and I try to get my mind set before I leave the door. So I hope anybody else out there watching can say, you know what, I haven't seen Moji lose his cool for a long time.
It's funny because I know I've talked with certain people and I'm like, man, sometimes I gotta get on you because if I don't get on you, I'll get in trouble, and then I gotta hear from Moji. And I ain't never see Moji get mad, and I just have to laugh.
That's good. That means it's working. It's working.
You know what I'm saying?
It's hard, it's really hard because there's some some cultures or some I guess different types of businesses. So we're in community service, but let's use construction as another example. And sometimes our work has to overlap, right? So I'd be in a meeting with some executive, and they're doing work for us and all that sort of stuff, and I'll be like, yeah, man. So where's this? Like, where's the container? We haven't seen the container or anything like that, right? And he's like, all right, okay, Herman, I'm gonna phone my foreman, right? And but when my foreman comes on the phone, I need you to be mad, man. I need you to be angry. Right? And I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, man. You gotta. It's just not my thing in work to behave that way and to act that way. But some people think like that's how you get things done. I just don't believe in it. I don't believe in it at a very young age in work. I remember what made me get it like right away is that with a lot of young people, when the minute you start doing, especially work with children, your immediate instinct is to protect them, right? Like whether you've been a parent or not in your life, the minute you start doing work with kids, you're protecting them. That's what you feel you're doing. And I remember some kids went to scatting's a very public place. I remember some kids went to the washroom, and there's a little girl in the washroom, and one of the women at scatting in one of our programs, sistering programs, went in there and just scared the hell out of her. Just like was angry and screaming and all that sort of stuff. And the little girl came out yelling, and I remember my first instinct was to protect her. So I ran up to where I knew that program was running, and I sort of barged in, and I'm just like, "You can't, blah blah." And I was like, all big and all scary and all, just really, really intimidating. And I remember the counselor in that program, took me aside and said, "Herman, like a lot of these women here are survivors of domestic violence, and you coming in here as a man and behaving that way is like traumatizing to all of them,
Mm-hmm.
right?" So even though I was being very protective and thinking I was doing the right thing, in a sense I was actually doing the wrong thing, and I was like making a lot of other people really, really uncomfortable and afraid and all that sort of stuff. So I started having to check myself that way, and that's when I started adopting more of an attitude where it's like, you gotta keep it cool. You gotta be calm.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know who you're gonna trigger. I work in a public space with all of these different demographics
Mm-hmm.
and all that sort of stuff, right? And how to behave. Sometimes you gotta use your street mentality
Mm-hmm.
in the public space as well, and you have to use that. But you need to be very, very careful where you sort of exercise that type of behavior, and know when to keep calm. Like I know that sometimes you come in and you're freaked out in a situation where there's already gasoline there, and then you light that shit up, bro. You know what I mean? Just everybody, so like if a kid's missing, you can't freak out, right? You have to do your freak out afterwards, right? You need to stay calm.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to give everybody instruction, and you need to find a kid, and you need to exercise all of your safety protocols. Remember all of that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, really stressful to try to do both, because you need to manage your own emotions, because you want to find that kid. So I learned that as well. That there'll be time for me to de-stress and freak out about that afterwards. But for now, let's find a kid. Let's keep calm. Let's make sure everybody else, they're freaking out, but you gotta let them know that how, I need you to do this right now. I know it's scary, but we're gonna find a kid, sort of stuff, right? So it's moments like that in your career where you learn to understand and hone those skills, and then you have to de-stress. You have to spend time with your family. You have to do all of that sort of stuff. Do good things, and most of the night don't talk to each other on the weekends too often. We talk to each other. We talk to each other every day almost.
Mm-hmm.
But on the weekends we don't, and I think that's just something we developed over time, because we can't talk about work
Yeah.
7 days a week, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we catch up. When we catch up at family functions, our families know each other and all that sort of stuff, and we're doing things out there together, and but we try not to talk about work Saturday and Sunday and things like that, because that's part of being healthy, is understanding when to turn it off.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to turn it off.
Absolutely, that's a great point, man. Like you got to be able to distinguish, because the work can get demanding. That
I was just about to say, it's hard. It's because of how personal the work is. It's kind of hard to turn it off at times. But
Yeah, and for us, we're in a more of a unique situation than other colleagues that would do similar type of work, in the respect that we actually work in communities that we grew up in. So our connection to the community, the families, the kids, the youth that we work with is a lot more personal to us. And so when we unfortunately lose a life, it hits a little differently than somebody that you just worked with, because essentially this is somebody that we've actually seen grow up. This is the family members that we know we're connected. And so us, we've had a lot of those experiences too throughout our career, where we've lost young people in our communities, unexpectedly and so forth. So for us, it's like, we are that foundation for the community that's grieving, the family that's grieving, and how to AP and Scatting Court support them, at the funeral, at providing the reception. And so during that time, we don't have a chance to grieve ourselves or to really, show our emotions. Really, we're just trying to be that rock and foundation for the community to support them. But, when we leave and we go home, it hits us like, it's like, yeah, like how do we just lose this young person? Like there's so much potential, and, this young person lost their life, or even, our peers who we grew up with. But I think it's important to be able to go home and to be able to de-stress and have that space, that gap for yourself, because I think if we didn't have that, we would have a lot more burnout, because you can't just internalize something like that and always just stay on all the time, and you have to have those outlets, man. Yeah.
Yeah, and burnout's real.
yeah,
Burnout's real. Like, I mean, and just because just because our jobs seem to have like an incredible sort of recreation and leisure element to it. No, no, no. Like I mean, you if you're doing administration, and you're dealing with individuals. Life and security and all of those types of things. There's a lot of stuff wrapped into what we do. That is sometimes the only element of somebody else's job. So when you add them all up, it can get pretty stressful, and you can get burnt out doing this, right? So you need to protect yourself. You need to protect yourself, and one of the ways to do that is to make sure that you're able to, separate your life from the work, and to make sure that you have time to de-stress and to come back fresh and do it again, whether it's after vacay or after a Sunday.
And speaking of the recreation side of things, something that's been big in the community it has been lacrosse. I know for myself, it's unfortunate. Like I came up at the time where cuts started happening, so the lacrosse program ended up disappearing. So I didn't get as involved. But I remember always growing up seeing everybody with their lacrosse stick and whatnot, and always wanting to be part of that. Can you kind of speak to the lacrosse involvement in the community as well as the other recreation as well?
Oh, for sure, for sure. Lacrosse was huge, man. I remember, I remember the first days of picking up a lacrosse stick and the ball, and my good friend Peter Grant, who let me use his stick, and then eventually I ended up with Bob Ellis in the Synchronous Lacrosse program, formally. But running around with the lacrosse stick was like as early as seven years old. So a lot of us got introduced to the game like so young, so young, by the time you're 13, 14, it is a part, like a really, really big part of your life. And my first job in the community was teaching lacrosse. Believe it or not, right? Just like, you guys want to pay me to do this? Are you serious? Are you serious? Are you guys serious? Like, I can get money teaching kids how to pass and catch. I would do it for free, and I was doing it for free as a volunteer and all that sort of stuff, right? So, lacrosse was always coming, So, in the off season, you gotta take care of your body. We played other sports, of course, basketball being one of them, but lacrosse was always coming, right? And as the older and older you got, especially for me, it's like, man, I got to get back in shape. I gotta, get ready for lacrosse. You really wanted to win, but it's so like for us, it was a way of life, right? It wasn't like basketball never ended up being that way for me, right? Because we played lacrosse, different mindset, like basketball for all intents purposes not a contact sport, right? Lacrosse is brutal, right? There's hitting and there's slashing. And it's a different mentality. A lacrosse player's mentality is much different than a basketball player's mentality, right? So, your teammates are like, they're like your brothers in combat, sort of stuff, right? We found these really, really great bonds, and the things that we're able to do on the floor with our lacrosse sticks. It's only a product of like a lot of practice and a lot of hard work, right? So when you go in a game, and just remember, it's a brutal sport, right? It's a tough sport, man. You gotta be fast, you gotta be strong, and then when those things that you do that would be considered nice, like when somebody dunks a basketball, or somebody does like a crossover, like you see kids working on their crossover in the gym. Imaginary crossovers forever in basketball, forever, right? And there's nothing like when you shake somebody with a crossover and you break their ankle, so to speak, right? So just imagine that in a sport where you try to be nice, you will literally get your head knocked off. Right? Just imagine trying to be nice, right? So we were nice, right, Moji? We were nice.
Swag on the court.
We were
No
nice.
doubt
We were
about it.
swag, man. We were like we were we'd be considered really beautiful to watch. I mean, a lot of other people were like lacrosse, hockey players, staying in shape for hockey, right? And we were lacrosse players. We didn't play hockey. We were just lacrosse players, man, 24/7. So we had a lot of us had really exceptional hand and eye coordination, a lot of great ball handling skills. You had to be fast, man. There isn't too many slow lacrosse players. Right?
I remember going to tournaments as kids, and like you said, parents from other teams will want to come and watch our team play because we just play with a different level of finesse than the other teams. You know, we incorporate some of that basketball skill, some of that back in those days, you know, that dance skills that we also we always, you know, we put on a little bit of a show when we play lacrosse. So we always had this external fan base that followed us everywhere we go. But one of my things that I always remember, Herm, was whenever we played home games in our community.
Oh yeah.
So when we played home games at Dundas and Bathurst in that outdoor rink, it reminded me of what you would see in the Friday night lights in terms of U.S. Football Friday nights in the States, where
Absolutely,
the community would come out, the entire community would come out, and they would just swarm that entire perimeter of that rink. So, you know, you'd have community members, parents, friends, siblings, schoolmates. They'd just come out. Teachers would come watch us, and any team that came down there would be quite intimidated because you would have easily 100+ community members surrounding the entire rink. Some kids climbing on the top of the fence, hanging off of the fence while you're playing a lacrosse game, and it was just, you know, they were loud, they were aggressive, and it was a great moment because you got to demonstrate your skills in front of your community. So for us, we took a lot of pride in terms of playing at home. For the other team coming to visit us, you know,
not so nice.
Not so nice. And we talk to some of those guys in our adult life now, and they always tell us, "Man, well, that was an intimidating environment to go into to play you guys in your home arena. They dreaded coming down here to play us." But I always remember that always felt like such a community event. It was more than just a game; it was like a community gathering. You know, a few nights a week, at Dundas and Bathurst, in different age groups. So you know, we were the young kids, and we played the first game, and then the older kids would go ahead of us, and then we'd go all the way up until the midget, which were typically the 15 and 16-year-olds. So as a kid who was, you know, 9 and 10, I'd watch the 15 and 16-year-old guys play, and to me that seemed really rough and kind of scary. And I was like, oh my gosh, man, I don't know if I'm going to play when I'm 15 and 16 because it looks like it's rough. You're going to get banged up really good when you get to that age, right? But of course, as you go through your age group, you know, your skills continue to grow, and you continue to grow, and you know, you excel at that age. But I remember thinking, man, by the time I'm 15 and 16, I'm retiring. But I was lucky enough to play right until 21, man. So even after 16, and there was no lacrosse program in Alexandra Park, myself, a few other guys from my generation, we ended up going to play for the Toronto Beaches and spent 5 years up until 21 years old. So it was a big part of our lives, man.
Really big part. I know that the like under 17 provincial A finals would be like the Super Bowl of our amateur careers, and so you always wanted to play A, and it was like hundreds of teams trying to play A, but only the really good teams got to play A. So a lot of us played B, and then you had to beat all of the A teams in a tournament at the end of the year to win the provincial A finals, right? So it's literally the Super Bowl. So my brother's team, they're just one age group ahead of us. They went to the provincial A finals, and they won under St. Christopher House, and that ended up being like even like an amazing experience for us. Right, because there's, you know, you're associated with a program or a club that won the Super Bowl, right? And my big brother played for that team, you know, and then a lot of my other big brothers, as they ended up being for me, were on that team. Basically, our heroes, because they did something for our program that is really hard to do. Like, it's really hard to do, and that's what I mean about, you know, how amazing we were as athletes and as lacrosse players, because we had no business winning something so tremendous. For all of Ontario, something like that, right? So, hats off, and respect to those guys that did that, and Danny Atkinson, who led that program, because that's my shining moment.
Yeah,
You
big,
know,
big
like
up to that generation.
big up to that
there,
generation,
Man. Gotta give
man.
it to them. They always remind us, though.
They always remind us.
Yeah.
They got to do it.
No. Like,
No,
I mean,
good for them, man. They represented, man.
It is a big part of being associated with St. Chris Lacrosse is being that close to them, and a lot of other teams, won B championships and won big tournaments, and went to the nationals, all these types of things, right? But that's the one thing that we'll always be able to hang our hats on, whether you played for them or not. We're sort of deeply associated with that win and that honor, and it's a big honor for the entire lacrosse program. And those kids in them, I saw that same group. I mean, there's a little exhibit going on. There's a picture of that same group as 7 or 8 year olds.
Yeah.
Right. So they played together until they were under 17. So that's anyway, big thing, big thing.
My generation was really close, but we were in that time where society kind of, the environment of that community kind of pushed some of our guys into the system at a young age. And we had grown up as kids from 7, 8 years old all the way through. And in our last year, we entered as a division team because we had, proven ourselves in Batum and coming up. So we were a team. And I felt like we had a really good chance of winning that prestige title that year. But we had guys like Bubby and Glennie, Tyrone Williams, Cortez Jackson, Trey Scissord, Julio, Walter Morello, Byroson, myself.
That was a good club.
We had an amazing club, but Cortez, unfortunately, at a young age, kind of in and out, and he had to go away and do his little juvenile time at that time. And Trace, I remember getting injured, and we just started losing these key pieces to our puzzle. And we didn't end up getting the title, but I think we were close that year, man. It was just the pressures. It was the pressures of growing up in the hood at that time that kind of steered some of our kids away. But we had a really, really talented group of kids. Pat Van Hooser was on that team, so a really group of talented lacrosse players, man. But yeah. I wish we had that title so we can hang our hats up high with that group there, man, because it's a big accomplishment, and it's and rightfully so, man. For those guys to continue to celebrate that, we celebrate that with them, because that was a community win. It wasn't our generation, but it was a community win, and those guys were inspirational for us, because some of those guys were actually ended up being coaches.
Absolutely.
And that was the beautiful thing about lacrosse too, is that it wasn't just about playing with your generation. It was like the mentorship model that was attached to that. And it may not have been a formal mentorship model, or maybe it was, and we just didn't know it. But, hats off to, people like Bob Ellis, Danny Atkinson, Bob Opperman, who created this model where kids who were playing lacrosse and were older, your responsibility was to coach and mentor the younger generations below you. And we had so many of our coaches that were just a few divisions older than us that ended up being our coaches that, kind of instilled that in us. And some of those things that we learned as kids playing lacrosse with these amazing individuals, we took those pieces into our professional lives too, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the determination, to get things done and to do things the right way, and the template and all that sort of stuff. You don't realize that you're in it, right? Until you actually start doing this work, you're just like, shit, this is the template. This is how this is done, right? And so for those individuals that did it as volunteers, just laid out that template where it's like, these kids they need activity, right? They need to be busy. They need to be busy like this, and I need to be consistent, and I need to be their rock. I need to be their role model. So it isn't a coincidence or a fluke that Mosen and I do that for young people today, simply because folks did that for us, bro. Like, I mean, let's just say it, Bob Ellis, Danny Atkinson. They, they did it since we were 7. I'm in my mid 50s now. Bob passed away not too long ago. So for 50 years, Bob and Danny has been, representing that for us, right, in our community, right. So that's how it's done. That's the template. That's what you do, right. And you try to in a sense, save as many lives as possible just by making sure that you remain consistent and you continue to do hard work and you bring others along with you, as much as possible.
And staying on the track with lacrosse, because I do remember growing up, like everybody had a lacrosse stick. Like if you didn't have one, it would be a question: Where's your lacrosse stick? What you doing? What you talking? You ain't from down here. You ain't got no lacrosse.
Yeah.
But you touched on and mentioned the fact that there's an exhibit going on. By the time this actually airs, I don't think the exhibit will still be running. But can you speak on the exhibit and what its impact is or should be?
Sure. Let me take it.
Sure.
Yeah. Sure. So I mean, we should start that conversation um, uh, by giving a big shout out to Lance Wynn, who's a member of the St. Christopher House Lacrosse alumni. He told me that he's the chairperson. He's the chair of the St. Christopher House Alumni Association. But he's been instrumental in documenting the history of St. Christopher House Lacrosse and the sort of sole force behind making sure that we don't forget, right? And he's done a lot of stuff and this particular exhibit is a combination of his determination to make sure that we don't forget, and Toronto Metropolitan University and a professor down there, Solomon. What's Solomon's last name? Raham. Yeah, Solomon, who just out of sheer coincidence grew up down here with us, with Cardinal Official, and became a lawyer, and now is a professor there, and his children play lacrosse, right? Just like you can't make this stuff up, right? So he was just like on the rink with me one day. We're trying to bring lacrosse back in our community, so we're out there on the rink sometimes. And he's like, Herman, there's this spot, man. Like the Image Center, blah 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 blah. Wouldn't it be great to like have an exhibit on, the history of St. Chris lacrosse and all that sort of stuff? I think it'd be kind of cool. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but Mosa and I, we have great ideas. Every day there's a great idea, right? And but he kept at it. He kept at it, and then I spoke to Lance, and Lance was like, "Yeah, great." We had a meeting, and we went down, and they put together this really really sort of interactive display of our history, and what's important about it is that, like I said, we don't want to forget, right? We have to do everything that we can to make sure that that program is not lost forever. I mean, losing the program also means that we lose a little bit of Alexandra Park and the history of Alexandra Park, and that's at risk. I mean, they're literally removing the buildings that represented Alexandra Park and the community that we grew up in. They're taking them away slowly, every few years, kind of stuff, right? So any attempt to maintain and keep that history is important, right? So lacrosse is a big part of it. It's a big part of the lives here. It started in the '60s, and there's a lot of community, a lot of lives that are connected to it. So the exhibit helps to maintain that. And then second part of this is that we're finally talking to somebody else about lacrosse, right? So we talked to lacrosse players about lacrosse. We talked to Alexandra Park community and alumni, and residents and all that sort of stuff about lacrosse, but now we're talking to university students and university professors, and some of them are journalism students, and they're reading and they're researching, and they're asking questions about our history, and they're young people, and they're going to go out and they're going to tell this story, and they're going to remember this story, and I'm sure as a result of this, there's so many branches, so many different things that could happen, right? So, we'll hear about St. Chris lacrosse through their eyes, right? Based on the exhibit, right? So those are the two important things about the exhibit, and it's going to show up around Canada, I'm sure, the exhibit itself. I'm hoping to get it here.
Yeah.
Hoping to get it here in our community and all that sort of stuff, right? Because it seems like, oh yeah, we're going to put up some stuff about our history in a small space, and you don't realize how powerful and impactful it is until you actually see it curated, right? So hats off to Solomon and Kathleen, and there's another young woman I met last night, I forget.
Cheyenne.
Yeah, Cheyenne, and all those individuals that helped to put that together. It's wonderful, and continued success to Lance in his journey to document the St. Christopher House lacrosse story.
Lance has really kind of spearheaded a lot of this stuff, or it's been a few years actually for Lance, because he started doing interviews with alumni a few years back, doing some stuff at Scatting Court, using the space at Scatting Court to do interviews with alumni, and thankfully he did that because he had the opportunity to interview Bob Ellis before Bob passed. And so he was able to capture some stories and some videos from Bob, and so very thankful that he was able to do that. But he continued to drive and continue to move that along, and I think Lance's ultimate goal is to put together a full documentary to tell the rich, unique story about Alexandra Park lacrosse, because there's no other lacrosse team in the country that's going to be as culturally diverse as the St. Christopher House lacrosse program. So that's a unique story in itself. It's a special story, and it's special to us here in the community and those who are part of that. One of the other things that Lance did recently was to advocate for representation of our program in the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame. So in 2025, in the fall of 2025, we inducted 3 of our St. Chris founders into the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame, which was the first time to have any representation of our program in the Hall of Fame. First time to have a African Canadian member in the Hall of Fame. And we went out there. Scatting Court put together, invested in a bus to transport community members out there for that special celebration, and we represented. I remember hearing from the folks at the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame that they've never had such a big turnout for an induction ceremony ever, and that was really us showing our pride in terms of how special lacrosse was to us, and for us to get this recognition for those folks that made it possible for us. So, shout out to Lance for spearheading that, and a special recognition, of course, to Bob Ellis, Bob Opperman, and Danny Atkinson for being inducted into that Hall of Fame. But when you think about the stories, folks have heard about them, but maybe not everybody that's going to watch this knows about some of the stories that we experienced as kids going to play lacrosse. And we played for the organization formerly known as St. Christopher House. A lot of our parents didn't have the financial means to drive us to games and to watch our games, so we relied on the community organization, which owned a van, to pack us kids in there with a driver and a coach to go play our games. And so when we pulled up, you had this culturally diverse group of kids with this makeshift equipment that, sometimes was falling apart. And, we're coming from, from social housing, so we obviously didn't look like we had a lot of money going to play these games. A lot of folks looked at us like we were orphans. So a lot of folks looked at us like, here's these poor kids from an orphanage named St. Christopher House coming to play lacrosse. And that was kind of the reception we got. And, sometimes there was a level of ignorance and racism that came connected to that, especially when you're talking about, the 70s and the 80s, where people, including parents, and going into these communities where they would use racial slurs towards us as little kids. So, we're 8, 9, 10-year-old kids, and we're hearing racial slurs on the floor against our competitors, but also hearing that from their parents in the stands. And for us as kids, we didn't have our parents there to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to kind of look out for each other and protect each other. And that's kind of how we built those lifelong bonds, is, going into these hostile environments and looking out for each other and watching over each other's backs. That continued well into our adult lives. And those stories were so similar. So outside of my generation, the generations before me and after me had similar experiences. So intergenerationally now, we all shared these different bonds, and we shared the same stories. And so, it didn't matter if you were 2-3 generations older, we had the same experiences growing up playing lacrosse. And so that was the kind of mesh that bonded all these generations together. So when you talk about lacrosse, and you talk about the community involvement and what it took to get these teams going, there was that whole community investment. But for us playing the sport, that community was built when we left our neighborhood, more so than when we were actually here in Alexandra Park. That's when our bonds really formulated and became real strong. Yeah, and even when we left our community out of elementary school and started going to high school, we all made friends in different high schools wherever we ended up. But it was always the folks that we grew up with here in Alexandra Park that were the lifelong friends that extended beyond our time at high school or college, university. It always going back to the guys that we grew up with playing lacrosse in Alexandra Park, man.
Slight pivot, but not exactly. You touched on it a bit, the fact that the revite is happening. The community, I know I was driving by with my mom a while back. And when I told her where we were, because we were coming up Cameron, she was like, this looks different, until we got by the basketball court. And I was like, oh, and the memories start coming back a little bit. One of the things that I think about is how to maintain the same community and culture feel when I know it's going to look completely different. I know there was some pros and some cons to the way the community was designed, but I feel the way that it was and how it was enclosed in its own way kind of helped build that community, in a sense of your neighbor, your next door neighbor was right there, somebody lived down the road, you take a walk over here, versus in some other parts where it's just kind of streets, it doesn't feel as connected. I guess what are some ways that we can hope to keep that same community vibe going forward through the Revite, and how have you seen the Revite kind of affecting that?
I'm basically like an outsider, sort of looking in, being a little bit outside with Scatting Court, and but having to think about and understand how Scatting Court as a community center is affected by your Revite, because of the the change in density, the potential change in demographic, and all of that sort of stuff, right? And I think specific to Scatting Court and Scatting Court's sort of future and its longevity. I mean, I think that the organizations need to stay true to their mandates, right? To serve the Alexandra Park community and to continue to meet those needs. The needs may change, right, as a result of the change in demographic, right? But you, as an organization, you need to be able to understand and recognize those and make sure that you're steering your programming and everything about what you do to ensure that you're continuing to meet those needs. If you can't you can't say that our programs did this in the past, right? You need to always make sure that like what the current need is what it is that you're continuing to service, right? You do that by, of course, a lot of things happen much easier in our community through word of mouth, right? And you gotta keep your ear to the ground. You gotta hear what people are saying. You gotta listen to your community board. You gotta believe that the board is relaying the information to you that you hear, that they're hearing in the community, and all of that sort of stuff, and make sure that everybody is invited to the table, right? As new groups form, as new residents move in, and all that sort of stuff, make sure that they're invited to have a conversation, and that we're listening to those conversations and we're making the necessary changes as things develop, right? Because that's the only way that we're going to continue to be relevant is if we are sticking to our mandates and making sure that we're continuing to address needs.
Yeah, the community is changed. We know that physically is gonna change, and demographically is gonna change, more density and all that stuff. But I think the responsibility that we have as the organizations is to continue to provide opportunities for people to feel connected to the community. And that's things like the mentorship program, engaging with our residents to make sure that there's opportunities for them to be involved in programming, employment, mentorship to continue to build that community pride. One of the things that I think is very special to Alexandra Park is community events that happen here in our neighborhood. A lot of communities, typically on a long weekend, there's this mass exodus where people head out and they go up north or they go visit families outside the downtown core. Whereas in Alexandra Park, their families are living here in Alexandra Park. And, over the years, what I've noticed is that on the long weekends, when we do celebrations, for example, like Canada Day or Civic Holiday barbecues around Back on the Block time, the representation for the community is strong. Whereas some parts of the community some parts of the city look very quiet. Here in Alexandra Park, it's very much alive. People are in their backyards, the community's out, they're celebrating. So I think continue to support those type of events where folks feel a part of something, they feel a part of the community is integral. It's important for us to continue to do those things because that's kind of where you instill that community pride and maintain that community fabric. Because, like I said, the physical structures might change, but the community pride is our responsibility to make sure that it continues to exist throughout the changes and stuff like that.
Let me see. I'm gonna check the time here. We getting closer to 2:00, so I ain't gonna hold you, gentlemen, because I know both of y'all is very, very busy individuals and face a lot of demand. But I did feel it was very important to have y'all on the platform for a few reasons. One of them definitely to give y'all flowers for me personally, because both of y'all were integral in my growth, and I wanted to make sure you guys knew that. But also, with that being said, I feel as a society we look at how do I want to say this? We look at celebrities and certain public figures and all of that as these heroes and people to idolize and people to look to. Whereas I have a very different lens. I look at folks like yourself. I look at the younger folks in the community. I look at the people who are around me are the real heroes and the folks that I get inspired by. And I love having the opportunity to sit and have conversations and kind of pick people's brains on what motivates them, what helps drive them, their thought processes, how they navigate certain things. And I just felt it was very important to have two of y'all, the two of y'all who are extreme pillars in the community, sit on this community podcast and just allow the people an opportunity to see how y'all minds work and how the wheels turn and the thought process and whatnot. So I thank y'all for taking time out of your day to sit down and have this conversation and thing.
Appreciate you, old man. Thanks for doing this, man. This is fantastic. Like what you're doing here, capturing these stories, I think it's amazing. I've seen some of the podcasts and the conversations, and they're so rich. I appreciate you doing it. I'm glad I got to do it with my colleague for 30 plus years, man. We've been doing this for a long, long time together, and I always big shout out to my guy Herm. I think he's one of the reasons maybe I've never really told him personally. Maybe I have, but he's one of the reasons why I stuck it out, because I had a lot of opportunities or a lot of moments where I just wanted to, make that exit and then, just continue to get motivated, inspired by Herman to keep doing it. And hats off to you, Herm C, for keeping me engaged in this work, keeping me true to this community work, and all the other mentors that a long list of community mentors that were there throughout my journey as well. Thanks to those folks, and very special to know that between the work that we've done, that we've inspired yourself also, because today you're inspiring the next generation, and that's the ripple effect of what we do here. We might not be directly connected to the youth in the community today, but we know as an extension through you and Labib and Trevor and all these amazing youth workers, from the community who were part of our programming and our mentorship are now the ones that are on the front lines, instilling that mentorship and that community pride, and developing the new crop of leaders for our community. So, I think I'm happy about the place that we're in. I feel like this model continues to thrive in Alexandra Park, and we'll continue to have homegrown leaders representing our community and our organizations well into the future.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Most thanks for the accolades. Not necessary. I mean, I knew that you were going to do this work, whether it was here or like a city council or somewhere like that. I knew that you were going to do this. Your your lineage and who you're connected to just by siblings suggests that you're going to do big things, whether it's here or something else. So I knew that, and that's why I supported it. And I just knew that it was a fire I was fanning, so to speak. And also, thank you for continuing to doing the work that you do. This and happy birthday, Alexandra Park. That's coming up. It's been been 50 years, and I'm thinking about that because I know that on Saturday we're going to be talking a little bit about that. But it's not it's not a great birthday if you guys weren't doing what you were doing the last few years, right? What a great community space, what a great community center, what great work that you guys are doing, and like when you come into space you could feel it, like I really believe in the aesthetics of a space, not just a community center, right? Like the space, like every space you go into is respectful, it's clean, and all of that is conducive to learning, right? There's a reason why you go to some classrooms and the teacher set it up in a way that it's so calm and so clean and so organized and all of that sort of stuff, right? And our community needed that, needed a clean, calm space to come that sort of reflect the attitudes that we need in the communities like ours. Need a space to come and de-stress and learn, right? So hats off to you guys for creating that space for us and taking really good care of the community center that took really good care of us, like most of it myself, right? I mean, I think that's the
Herman, one of your jobs was here at Alexandra Park, right?
Oh,
When you're
absolutely.
with
Absolutely.
Oso's brother, my
Absolutely,
brother,
yeah,
Oso's
yeah,
brother,
yeah,
and you
yeah,
guys.
yeah. We're all connected. We're all connected to this space.
Exactly.
Whether we like to believe it or not, man. Like, I mean, I wear the Scouting Court flag, really proudly, sort of stuff. But I know where my roots are, right? The roots run deep, sort of stuff, right? So I understand that, and I just wanted to thank the two of you for continuing to do that work with this space here, not just the community. I mean, I know that, but making this making the 50th birthday of this place and to have it be represented so proudly and so wonderfully is important to me, and has always been important to me. And that's why I very quietly continue to support the development and the growth of the community center. And we have Mosin, who brings a lot of the administrative stuff that we learned to the community space. But I mean, everything else about Alexandra Park he learned through community. He didn't learn none of this stuff from Scouting Court. He learned all of this stuff from coming here. His mom gave out free help with free breakfasts here. His brother worked here, so everything that Molson has given back, he learned in his community, sort of stuff, right? And I'm so proud of that. Administratively, we learned some really important lessons and some really good things to do, and how to find resource and keep them, and all that sort of stuff, report writing, whatever, all of that sort of stuff. Absolutely important, but the important part of what we do, we learned right here in Alexandra Park.
Absolutely agree. One other thing I'll highlight is being gratitude or being grateful and having gratitude seems to be a strong standpoint with a lot of the folks that I've had sit down for these conversations. None of us seem to be able to just take a compliment very well. We're always kind of quick to throw it back the other direction. But no, like it's that's definitely a strong quality, is being gracious, being grateful for the opportunities, and appreciative for them. So, yeah, appreciate y'all.
Keep doing what you're doing, though.
Keep doing what
Looking
you're doing,
forward
bro.
to all the episodes, man.
Nice,
That's
nice,
it,
nice.
Yes, man. Respect.